sea straight into the harbor. Look at how busted the UK Royal Mail system made my box. I'd show you the other side, but it's got my address on it. Let's open it up. So I ordered this quite literally a month ago, and it looks like we've got a lot of stuff in here. Actually, you know, in girl math fashion, this was a good job on finals, Merry Christmas, I got a raise gift. I'm gonna be real sad if any of these explode. Now that we have the stage fairly set, I figured I would go through all of my colors. The basic gist is that these are all the colors I'll be using to make handmade watercolor. I have been wanting to make handmade watercolor for over 5 years now. All of the pigments arrived. It did take about a month, and I'm sure that had to do with the holiday season plus customs, so not ideal, especially when they said it was going to be 8 to 10 days, but they're finally here. So we're going to start over here on the left with all of the reds, and I'm going to move some of these yellows because they're cool, but not the focus right now. I, for whatever reason, ordered 2 different sizes of red ochre. This is PR 102, and I have a lot of it. We're gonna be making a lot of red ochre and red ochre derivatives. I just looked at the manifest. I keep saying manifest when I mean inventory or something equivalent to that. I 100% ordered 2. I also have some brighter reds, Pyrrole red or Pyrrole, I think it's Pyrrole, and Venetian red. This one you can see has a lot more dust than this one because if we were to shake them both up, this bottle is covered in red pigment, and this one stayed fairly clean, which means I definitely want to wear a respirator when I'm working with this one. I'm going to wear a respirator for working with all of these pigments, but this is PR 254 here on the left, and another PR 102 on the right. I need to do a little bit more research on kind of what constitutes different pigment numbers, because several different shades can have the same base pigment. And I'm not quite sure what the difference is. These very bright synthetic oranges, cadmium orange, and oh, this is gonna be fun to pronounce, benzimidazole orange. PO20 and PO36. They look very similar, although I would say this one has a touch more red in it. This one is more of a cooler orange. I believe these are 10 grams of each pigment in 25 gram jars. This Mars orange, which is again another one of the more earthy colors. The earthy colors were the least expensive of all of the Jackson pigments. Earth pigments are much easier to produce. I skipped over this red earlier, but this is one of my favorites. This is another PR 102 called Caput Mortuum. This is a color I used a lot back in high school. I would mix this and indigo for a limited palette with a really nice dusky purple shade in between. PBR7, which is raw umber greenish, and PR 102, another PR 102, French burnt sienna. Quite the difference. This is much more of a cooler brown, and this is a much warmer brown. Raw umber greenish was actually a bonus color that I received when I purchased Poems About You watercolors for the first time back in like 2018 or 2019, and it was the color I used up the fastest. So when I saw that they had a 100 gram jar of it, I was like 100%, that's going to be one of the first browns I make because I use it so frequently. PBR7, Cypress Raw Umber. It looks very similar to Raw Umber Greenish. I have a lot of learning to do of why pigments are so different from one another. That will be a learning process. Another brown back here, it hid out with the yellows. Cypress Burnt Umber Light, another PBR7. It's almost like a mid-tone between the French Burnt Sienna and the Raw Umber Greenish. Raw Cypress Ochre here on the right, and Mars Yellow Deep. Mars Yellow is another one of those colors that I pretty much used up as soon as I bought it. Very excited to get my hands on this. Mars Yellow Deep is a much richer pigment versus the Raw Cypress Ochre kind of looks more muddy. Got another orange here. It looks very similar to the Mars Orange we were looking at earlier. Actually, it looks very similar to the Mars Yellow now that I look at it. This looks very similar to Yellow Ochre, which makes sense. It's Gold Ochre, it's PY43, and then PBR24 here on the left. Again, more earthy tones, higher volume per cost versus more synthetic colors. Cost quite a bit more for quite a bit less, but it's worth it to get those bright, not naturally occurring colors, in my opinion. Our last yellow is this lovely neon cadmium lemon, which is a PY35. I don't tend to work with a lot of neon colors in my art anyways. Moving on to the greens and grays. The first two here, excuse me, Antique Green Earth and Green Earth, both in 100 gram bottles. You can kind of see the difference. Antique here is on the left and regular is here on the right. Antique Green Earth has a much more muted tone versus the more modern Green Earth. Antique Green Earth is very hard to say over and over again. I think this is more of an earthy color versus this Green Earth, which I think has some synthetic pigments in it. They are both PG-23. This nice bright green, which is actually a color I use a lot. When I was first buying watercolors, I thought Hooker's green was going to be my big spender, but chromium green oxide. And I think it's because it's very opaque and also highly reactive to water. There are some watercolor pigments that you have to kind of let sit, but in my experience, chromium green oxide is one that just activates right away and produces a beautiful opaque wash. PG-17. Kiwi shade. That's fun. This one looked a little green on the website, but obviously it's more of a gray. Here on the left, we have titanium white anatase, which is PW6, and slate, Mars black. This is a key ingredient in making Payne's gray, which is my favorite shade of gray. My favorite shades are the blues, and actually the blues are the reason that I went with Jackson's Signature Art Supplies instead of a different brand. I was going to go with Natural Pigments, but their Prussian blue was like $20. So I decided to go with the cheaper pigment. I want to make as many colors as possible. That's kind of my goal right now. A manganese violet deep, a nice big jar of Prussian blue, PB36, which is cobalt blue, ultramarine, which is PB29, cobalt turquoise. I actually use this color quite a bit, and I was looking for some derivative of Mayan blue, which cobalt turquoise is. It's this nice, almost peacock blue, which I really like. And then to complement that, I purchased this cobalt blue deep. I'll definitely be trying a few off camera, and once I get the hang of things, I'll start posting watercolor making videos because I know they're fun to make, they're fun to film, and they're super fun to watch. So thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what colors you guys would like to see on the channel. I'll try and make that happen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.